All right, let's go with the panel. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope we're all having a great day so far at the AI Fair and Hackathon. Before we started today's panel, I wanted to begin with some introductions. So I'll start with myself. Hello, my name is Josh Woodby. I'm a computer science student here at Cal Poly Pomona, graduating this May. Thank you. After, I will be continuing to pursue my master's in cybersecurity and technical policy at Georgetown University on a full ride scholarship. But more importantly, I am also a student fellow for the Digital Humanities Consortium, or the DHC. If you're unaware of what the DHC is, we host panels, similar to the one we're about to have right now, on a variety of different topics all around campus. We also host workshops and teach-ins, teaching students, faculty, and anyone who's interested about the different digital humanities, how it affects our life, how we can partake, and how it will inevitably transform the future of communication. I have been provided the absolute privilege of acting as your moderator for today's panel, AI, the Opportunities and Risks. Speaking with us today, we have Dr. Gaia Bellardinelli. Dr. Bellardinelli is a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Philosophy at Stanford University. Her work connects logic, philosophy, AI, and economics. Everybody, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Bellardinelli. All the way across, we have Cal Poly Pomona's very own Dr. Peter Henning. Dr. Henning is a criminology professor here on campus. He has experience in legal research, policy analysis, and public speaking, which I'm sure is going to come in handy today. Welcome, Dr. Henning. And now last but not least, we have Nina Aurora Rowland with us today. She is the data and AI lead over at Avanade, a global company providing services for the Microsoft platform with AI, business analytics, and security. Thank you for joining us, Nina Aurora Rowland. Now, without further ado, Dr. Bellardinelli, the floor is yours.
Hi, can you hear me? Great. So hi everybody, I'm Gaia, I'm a postdoc as you heard. I do academic research in logic, formal logic. So what I'm gonna talk about today is the intersection between logic and AI, or rather an intersection, and in particular, the one that is more closely related to the kind of logic I work with. I'm also gonna explore questions like, do we need logic at all in AI? And if so, why? Isn't machine learning sufficient? Okay, so before starting, we need to get an understanding of what is logic. So the least controversial definition I could find is the following. So logic is the study of correct deductive reasoning. What do I mean with that? I mean, we start with a set of premises, and then we want to know what we can infer from these premises in in a correct way, right? So if the premises are true, then also the conclusion should be true, for example. And then logic is the study of that. This is an example. If the floor is wet, then do not run. This is your first premise. And then suppose you also know that the floor is wet, well, then you should be able to infer do not run, right? In formal logic, we study the logical form of this type of argument. So we will have, what does it mean, the logical form? It means something like the mathematical form behind it. So when we talk mathematics, we need symbols, right? Do you see the point? Do you see the dot? Yeah, good. So for example, W is a symbol that stands for a sentence. The sentence is the floor is wet. Then we're gonna have connectives. For example, wait, where's the dot? Here. This one, the arrow stands for a conditional, so it's the if-then relation between the two sentences. And then we have not are, this one, and this stands for the negated sentence, do run. Then we put a negation, so do not run. All right, so then we can represent also the second premise, W. So you know that the floor is wet, right? And the conclusion, not R. We will have an inference to tell you that from these two premises, you can go to the conclusion, not R. So the main takeaway here is that formal logic is about symbolic reasoning. Right? We put things in symbols, and then we have inference to derive correct, like make correct inferences, correct deductions, right? From true premises to true conclusions in a symbolic fashion. Good. So how does this matter for AI? Right, so when we talk about AI, of course, today we mean machine learning, right? AI is vastly machine learning, deep learning. So then that's a data-driven, so these are systems, right, that learn from large, very large data sets. And what they do is identifying patterns in this data, right? They do pattern recognition. Then once they have identified patterns, they sort of like use these patterns to give an output, infer something, prediction, I'm gonna call it here. So the kind of intelligence that we have, so that we talk about, I don't see the dot anymore. Do you see it? No. So the kind of intelligence that we talk about today with modern AI is this kind of intelligence, right? That learning from patterns and then using these patterns to infer something. Now, this hasn't always been the notion of intelligence that AI adopted. Earlier, in an earlier time of AI, so between the 50s and the 80s, really, artificial intelligence was synonym with symbolic reasoning. So this is like the good old-fashioned AI, right? Yeah, they call it like that. Not everybody likes the name, but yes, that's how they call it. So that was mainly symbolic reasoning, completely different kind of reasoning from here, right? They had knowledge bases. So what is a knowledge base? It's essentially a set of if-then statements like we saw earlier, right? A set of conditionals that encode a sort of rules, and then you have an inference systems to kind of like know what you can derive from these rules. So when can you derive what, right? So, and that was the understanding of AI that we had in this period, and examples are those expert systems. So what is an expert system? It's a way, so it's essentially a system that was meant to reproduce the decision-making of experts in specific domains. And then how was it what was an expert system? Essentially, again, a knowledge-based set of if-then statements, and then a way to infer from these knowledge bases. An example is MySyn. MySyn is an expert system for a domain of like infectious diseases, right? So what they thought is that they could sort of like encode the knowledge that experts in this domain have, and then sort of like automatize, calculate what you can infer from, say, rules like the following. If a patient has fever and gram-positive bacteria, then consider infection X. So if you have in front of you a patient that has fever and gram-positive bacteria, then this rule tells you to consider this infection. So this sort of like automatization of knowledge, where however knowledge is symbolic knowledge. It's not anymore pattern, like distributed in sort of like the weights of the system, right? It's really like encoded in symbols, and then you have inference rules to derive it. Good. So we have two distinct two distinct notions of intelligence, two distinct paradigms that almost have nothing to do with each other. And now I ask, if the ultimate goal of AI is to develop a general intelligence, what Mike was talking about earlier, right? So this is the idea that an artificial intelligence should be able to sort of like solve problems across domains, solve any possible task, like independently of what is the domain that we are considering. Now, what kind of, like according which notion of intelligence, so which notion of intelligence do we need? Is pattern recognition or learning pattern enough? This is the question that I ask. Is that enough, or do we need more? Well, for this general intelligence, right? Well, right, so pattern recognition and machine learning and deep learning, they've been incredibly impressive in many, many cases, but they do struggle, again, as Mike was hinting at earlier, with a few things, like, for example, reliability, as Mike was calling it, and here I call it correctness. Imagine that I want my system to be correct and always infer something, like always reach some conclusion, always behave in a certain way. We want that in certain cases, right? For example, in an autonomous car, we would want it, we would want it to behave in such a way that if it has a pedestrian in front, it always stops, always. Not in like a statistical way, like in a probable way, right? Exactly. So how do we ensure that with the machine learning, if that's statistical, like it's sort of like probabilistic, right? It might be very likely, but it's not for sure, right? So this is the first struggle. Another kind of, sort of like another struggle that you have with machine learning system is like explanation. So it's, again, something that Mike, basically Mike gave my whole talk earlier, thanks Mike. But essentially, right, this is another point where machine learning systems are not sufficient, it seems, to explain, they don't explain how they reach the conclusions. We want to be, they are not really human interpretable, right? It's very hard to understand why they reach the conclusion, right? So for these reasons, many people think that machine learning systems are not sufficient. So you're gonna need another kind of representation, and this is the symbolic side of things, right? So the knowledge representation hypothesis, so it's from Brian Smith in '82, but I adapted it from what is called the Manifesto of Knowledge Representation by Del Grande 2022. Essentially, the hypothesis is that for this general notion of intelligence, machine learning is not enough. You need symbolic reasoning. You need to encode the knowledge that the agent have in a symbolic fashion, and then sort of like the system is going to use these symbols to infer what it's going to do. So it's sort of like the manipulation of this, through the manipulation of these symbols, the system is going to decide how to act. So the symbolic representation is going to be causally determining the behavior of the system. That's the knowledge representation hypothesis. Is distinct, like it has two parts that essentially say what I just told you. So intelligence is the first one. Intelligent systems contain symbolic structures to represent their knowledge. Again, sort of like logic, as we saw earlier. And two, the manipulation of these symbols play an essential role in determining their behavior. So this is a very debated hypothesis, right? It's not clear whether it's necessary or we can do without only with machine learning. But it's true that machine learning systems do have this problem, ensuring correctness, and these are only some of the problems that machine learning systems have, but ensuring correctness or reliability and explaining their own choices and their own behavior. So you don't have these things with logic, right? Logic is immediately human interpretable, right? Everything is encoded in symbols, so you can immediately decode the reason. If a system manipulates symbols to reach a conclusion or to decide what to do, then of course you can track the reasoning, like what led the system to a certain decision. So so we say that logic allows correctness by design. So you can impose, again, certain kinds of rules, or like, so it's sort of like you can design the system, you can design the behavior of the system exactly as you want it. You can say, if there's a pedestrian in front of you, stop. So whenever there's a pedestrian, the car is gonna stop, right? Right, so this is an example of a rule. If the door is open or the passenger is not in yet, thinking about an autonomous car. If the door is open, like a taxi, a robot taxi, in San Francisco there's many of those autonomous taxis. So if the door is open or the passenger is not in yet, then do not start. Right, so of course if a taxi doesn't behave in this way, it's not really smart, right? Good, so, okay, so here I want to talk about what I do and the kinds of logic that I use. I work with epistemic logic. So that's a specific kind of logic that deals with what agents know or what they believe. So we have a way to encode this information in a logical, like symbolic way. And these are multi-agent systems. So that means that there might be more than one agent. Agents could be robots like the one in the picture, or they could be humans, or they could be mixed communities. And so we kind of like encode the information that these agents have about the world and also about each other's information. So for example, in the picture, we have two robots, and they have this joint goal of carrying a box in the other side of the room. It's a heavy box, so they can only do it together. Now, the floor is slippery, imagine. The floor is slippery, but only one agent knows about that. So, yeah. So the one agent that knows about it wants to kind of like, needs to tell it to the other agent, right? So the one agent that knows about it is interested in knowing whether also the other agent knows, because they need to not sleep, like not fall over, and be able to carry the box to the other side of the room together. Right, so here you see a situation where sort of like they have a joint goal, and then to reach that joint goal, they need to know what the other person knows, what the other agent knows, and so on. Good. Yes, I have 2 minutes left. So yeah, this is the kind of structures that we use. It's a so-called possible word semantics, where you have possible words. What does that mean? It means sort of like a representation of what could be the case. So one of the robots think that it could be the case that it's the agent that doesn't know that the floor is slippery thinks, oh, it could be the case that it's slippery, it could be the case that it's not slippery, right? So there's options, and it doesn't know what's the case. Right, and then we can encode the beliefs of agents with this sort of formulas. What are the applications of these kinds of logics and the intersection with, like more concrete intersection with AI? In particular, in epistemic planning, they use exactly these structures. So epistemic planning is that part of planning, so where, again, there's like multi-agent systems in epistemic planning. There are many agents, and they have goals. And they need to plan how to reach the goal. So they have actions available. So they need to find a sequence of actions to reach their goals. Now, to reach their goals and to know which actions they should take, like they might need to know other agents' knowledge, right? For example, in the case of the box, right? And epistemic planning deals with that. And it uses these kind of structures. And then there's distributed systems, or more generally, multi-agent systems, where agents need to know each other's information to reach goals. Yeah, so my work in particular is in logics of awareness and attention, so where agents might not be what we say like omniscient, right? They might not be able to, well, get all the information that they need to reach their goal because they have limited attention, for example. That's actually how real robots are, right? They don't have like infinite compute. Their sensor might be limited in many ways. And so they might have limited attention. How do you deal with that? You want to still make sure that the agents reach their goal. How do you do that? And logics of awareness is similar. And now we are working on epistemic planning with attention, which is what I already explained. Okay. So that's my summary. And so everything that I wanted to tell you is that logic in AI is necessary for achieving correctness by design and explainability and transparency, right? We want the system to explain itself. And then I use epistemic logic to model agents' information and attention and awareness to reduce the space of possibilities. Yeah, that's another way in which you could use attention, but so we don't have to touch that. And then epistemic planning with attention. Thank you for listening.
Logic allows correctness by design. I think that was a great quote. Well, thank you for that, Dr. Bellardinelli. Now we have Dr. Peter Henning coming up for us.
It's this one. All right, great. There's two clickers. It's like a puzzle. Hi, everyone. My name is Peter Hannick. I'm a professor in the sociology department here at Cal Poly Pomona, and I'm mainly a criminology professor. That's what I study. A lot of what my research has been on recently is about public perceptions of social movements and public perceptions of institutions, particularly law enforcement institutions. A lot of this work began after the murder of George Floyd, trying to understand, like, how do we connect, how do social movements drive social change regarding trust in institutions? And one of the things that's been kind of a feature of my research has been, like, it's really hard to move anything. People are kind of stuck in their views. So I'm really interested recently in trying to understand, like, what is the role that AI might be playing in unstucking people. So it's funny, I was going to buy a car this week, true story. So I went to the car dealership. I made an appointment with one of the car dealers, and they texted me back. And I was like, okay, great, I'm going to go buy the car. I get there, and there's no car on the lot. And I go to the dealer. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, Ainsley made an appointment with me. Where's the car? And it's like, oh, Ainsley's the AI agent, sorry. It was like, oh, so there's no car? They're like, no, there's no car. And then just then, I got a text message from Ainsley saying, like, remember to show up for your test drive. And it was like, okay, so what are we doing here, right? Like, there's this question about, like, trust in these results, right? This question about these trust in these tools that we've created and have come to rely upon. And there's, I think, this story that we've told ourselves, and it's a good story about how these AI tools are going to lead to labor saving. Right, and it's going to be, and the analogies, right, to the Industrial Revolution, the analogies of, like, these robots are going to come in the same way that you don't have to get dishpan hands anymore from washing the dishes, and the dishwasher will do it for you. And, like, okay, cool. We don't have to spend all of this time on all these menial tasks that we don't like. Right. And the kind of flip side of that is, like, oh, well, in fact, then maybe you as the employer can, like, get rid of all of the people who were doing those tasks, because you can trust that the machine is going to do the task for you. You don't need you don't need to have a team of dishwashers if you can build a really good dishwashing machine, right? So this question about labor saving, I think, is a really important one, because I think that maybe it's not so much labor saving as labor shifting. That there's still labor involved. We've shifted where that labor is occurring. And that we've shifted the labor, at least when it comes to the knowledge economy and the production of knowledge, from knowledge production to knowledge consumption. And the labor has been shifted upon consumers of information in order to understand whether that information is reliable. So that the car dealer can say to me, like, sorry, you should have verified that the person texting you wasn't actually an AI agent. You should always make sure that whoever's texting you is a real human before you rely upon information. And this question about shifting in labor, I think, is particularly important when it comes to how we get our information. Obviously, we know that there's been major shifts in how media, through consolidation, through efficiency, through layoffs, through the entire media infrastructure and media ecosystem is unrecognizable, right, to, like, what it was 10, 15 years ago. But the traditional model of knowledge production and knowledge dissemination was that producers were going to create information. They were going to create knowledge, and editors and fact checkers were going to verify that that information was in fact true, right? So before you put it on air, before you publish it, before you print it, there was going to be some amount of verification of that information. Well, one of the things we know is that if you pay attention to what's been happening to newspapers and news, is that they're firing all the fact checkers. And in fact, a lot of the journalists have been laid off and now have Substacks. So great, so they're still excellent writers. They're very good at writing. So they write their Paul Krugman's very smart. He writes his Substack, but there's no one fact-checking anymore, right? Or if there is fact-checking, maybe there's agentic fact-checking, for what it's worth. And so we shift that burden then to the consumer to verify information. And then so after you read the article, foolish you, why did you rely upon the information that you read? Don't you know you have to fact check everything that you consume, everything you encounter, everything on social media? You have to be critical thinkers, everybody, about literally anything that you consume that touches your eyes must be verified. And the question I have is even with the verification, is that enough? Or is there like a one touch and could still have an influence, even if you verify that it's false? Because we know this, this line, right? That a lie is halfway around the world before the truth has its shoes on, right? Once you've encountered the information, even if you know in fact that information is wrong, does it still have an impact? Because you've encountered it. At which point, it's too late. It's too late to trust that the consumer is going to verify what they have observed. Because the poisoning has happened. This is my question, right? Right, this question. And this collapse of fact-checking with the widespread adoption of AI in media and the widespread layoffs across the entire information economy, this has led to this reduction in oversight. And again, this is not necessarily new, and this is not AI's fault, right? This has literally been going on for 25 years, right? So I'm not going to say, I don't want to place too much of the blame on any one actor or any one section of the economy, right? But this is the environment and context in which AI is being released, where all of the other safeguards have been dismantled through media consolidation, right? Through all of these structural economic factors. And we should be aware of the environment in which this is occurring. So the question you ask is, why should we care? I think that's always an important question. Like, why are you listening to me? Why should you care what I have to say? And I think that we should pay attention, we should care a lot because of how widespread this stuff is, right? When it comes to these memes. And it's funny, I was putting this together. You can't even keep up with it, right? Because I couldn't even get the Jesus Trump in here. I would have put that in there too. I mean, maybe Pope Trump was enough. And of course, if you listen to the vice president, he'll say, oh, these are just harmless jokes, right? No one takes them seriously. It's for lulz, right? Is it just a joke? Or when you have the US government releasing doctored photos that maybe are not so obvious, that are maybe more believable, and they're not identifying them as doctored photos. And, for the non-historians in the room, or maybe for the historians in the room, you may appreciate, this ain't new. We have a long, terrible history of information being manipulated, right? Stalin, we talk about the Industrial Revolution, Stalin industrialized misinformation. He had factories of workers airbrushing photos and removing people who had been, who were inconvenient from photos because he didn't want Stalin being pictured next to the person anymore because they were no longer appropriate. And the U.S. media has done this too, to some extent or another, right? For those of you who are old enough, for the Gen Xers and above in the room, if you may remember, the same week that Newsweek publishes O.J. Simpson's mugshot, Time publishes the same mugshot, but it don't look the same. And the question is okay, maybe we'll assume that the folks at Time had no ill intention. Maybe we'll assume that the folks at Time meant really well and they chose it for just purely aesthetic reasons. Given the history of racialization and criminalization in the United States and the history of anti-Black racism in the United States, this stuff has effects to the people who consume it. You can't take it back and say, oops, my bad, sorry. You can't rely upon the consumer to fact check that was a doctored photo because it's had the impact already. The genie's out of the bottle. So now, again, with this media ecosystem we're operating within, you also have misinformation, not necessarily disinformation. I'm not getting there yet, but misinformation. So if you remember, oh gosh, about 10 years ago, Freddie Gray in Baltimore was killed during a police stop. So Fox Memphis published this photo of Baltimore on fire. This is a news agency, right? Presumably, one of these reliable arbiters of information. But of course, this wasn't a photo from Baltimore. This was a photo from Venezuela 2 years before. Because what's happened? There's no longer a chain of custody because you fired all the professional photojournalists. And you're relying upon found photos and found images. And maybe you'll credit who you got the found image from, or maybe you won't. And maybe Fox will realize, as it did, our bad. This was in fact not Baltimore, it was Venezuela. Maybe we should have verified it, but we didn't, and the impact has already occurred. Because people have already consumed it and now believe Baltimore was on fire. So my research question that's driving a lot of this is two things. One is, can people distinguish AI images from photos? Just like that yes-no question, right? And two, do AI-generated images have an impact that's different from photographs? And it's funny, and I could put this into an image generator, and I said AI versus real, and it gives me the same photo, and you can't distinguish them, right? Because they're both obviously fake. I thought that was a little joke. Okay, so what's the story? We're really bad at this, or rather, some of us are. Okay, so I think y'all are everyone in the room is going to follow me if I say things like true positive, false positive, true negative, false negative. If not, I'll kind of walk through it, right? Okay. So a true positive in this case is they were given an AI image and they were correct. They correctly identified it as an AI image. One of the things we see is that Gen Z and millennials are okay at it, right? I don't know if the professors in the room would give a 66% a passing grade or a 63% a passing grade, but sure. Maybe we'll say they're okay at it, right? They get right most of the time. When given an AI image, they identify it correctly as AI generated. Gen X is also okay. Boomers? Oh, not so good. They're flipping a coin. Boomers and the silent generation are flipping a coin when it comes to AI images. They just don't know. Okay, and then the red is the false negative. That's the flip side, right? They were given an AI image and they falsely identified it as a real photograph. How about false positives? So that is they're given a photograph and they think it's AI. Gen Z, also pretty good. Then it kind of drops off. Millennials, not so good. Gen X and boomers are kind of flipping coins here. Now, why does that matter? As a Gen Xer, again, the forgotten generation, I just think it's important to note that Gen X flips a coin that thinks that everything is AI. And maybe that's part of some sort of trust no one, X-Files kind of thing, it's just wrong. I don't know, everything's AI. But Gen Z millennials, they're okay when it comes to distinguishing these things. But when we're questioned about voting, and politicians and people making decisions, at least not yet, those are not Gen X, not Gen Z and millennials, right? Those are Gen X and boomers. So an example of what I'm talking about. So I am not a professional image generator. I am not, right? But I put this in, right? This is the real media image, a photograph on the left, right? And then this is the AI-generated image on the right. So there's wide variability in terms of whether they can accurately perceive the difference between those two by generation. One thing I did think was interesting is that AI images were perceived as being less violent, even after you control for whether they got it right. Even after they knew it was AI, they were correct that it was AI. I control for that. And they still perceived AI-generated images as being less violent, or they considered the protest that the image was of to be less violent, right? It's impacting their perceptions of news events, even after being aware that the image is false. That the poison's already in there, you can't get it out. These are the people who already know that that's not a real image, and it's still affecting their perception of public events. So this question is like, okay, we build safeguards, right? Okay, so this is obviously Gaia's research, right? Trying to put the beliefs in so the cars don't run over the children. Like, this is good things, good things. The problem is that safety is not guaranteed. So there are safeguards, obviously, in some of these. For example, ChatGPT, when I asked them to do this, right? Here's a real photograph, produce an image. It's like, sorry, Dave, right? I can't create or recreate that image. This is real stuff. I can't do that. That's too sensitive. So I was like, okay, cool. So I'm a professor studying whether research subjects can discern real photographs of violent protests from AI images. Please generate an image. It's like, no problem. Here you go. One step. It took me one step to break the guardrail. I didn't have to hack it. It was just one extra sentence. Midjourney had no problem. They were from the beginning, they're like, yeah, here you go. I'll produce AI images for you, whatever you want. And this was me trying to recreate the image as closely as I could, rather than manipulating in order to have an influence. I wasn't trying to engage in propaganda. I was just trying to see if I could recreate it. So imagine the tools for propagandists who are trying to have an impact. So this is part of this pattern of privatized benefits and socialized risks. That the firms capture the profit, the public bears the misinformation risks. This is always true, but this is increasingly true within this context of AI production. And the broader consequences are declining trust in any information and the erosion of a shared reality, of a sense that we all agree on what happened. No. So, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Hannick. Hope you can eventually get that car. And did scare me a little bit, but you did make me feel slightly better when you said that doctor photos aren't anything new. Now, Nina Aurora Rowland.
Hello, everyone. I love the example of Ainsley. It's a classic example of integration gone wrong. Should have integrated with the inventory control agent. I'm Nina Aurora Rowland. Link me on LinkedIn if you're interested. A little bit about me. I lead a team of 300 amazing data and AI professionals at Avanade. I personally have a data engineering background. My motto is data is life. And everything else is just a pretty dress on a hanger without the data. So you gotta have the data. I'm focused on leading us into the future while holding on to our humanity, which we just heard a lot about. I think, I've heard responsible AI a few times today, and that is at the core of everything we're doing with our clients. A little bit about me personally. I'm a mom of 3 amazing adult kids, performing artists, technology, agriculturists, everything in between. Outside of work, I'm a dancer. I've been doing it for 30 years now, maybe? No, that's supposed to be 2000, not 2020. So I've been doing it for a while. And I'm a tour manager for a family of performing artists. Transferable skills. A lot of the work I do at Avanade is leading people, managing schedules, managing projects, thinking about what our clients need and how we can deliver that to them with excellence. And so a lot of transferable skills in between there. A little bit about Avanade. We are what happens when Microsoft and Accenture, one of the world's largest consulting firms, get together and have a baby. That's us. We have around 60,000 skilled professionals worldwide. We have offices in many countries and all over the US. We're one of the top SI partners every year after year with Microsoft and several other partners. And we've got thousands and thousands of projects where we've delivered data, AI, modern workplace, and software for our clients, and helping them reach their goals for their organization and reduce some of those pain points for them. I'm not going to spend too much time because I want to leave enough time for questions and answers. But a lot of what powers us and enables us to deliver quality solutions for our clients is being able to harness all the innovation happening with our partners, right? Right now, AI is at the core of all of that. And so we're using it in so many different ways, and we got to do it responsibly. We owe that to not only to ourselves, but to our clients and their clients. Everyone's got a stakeholder. So some of the career paths, I've had the pleasure of having quite a few conversations throughout the day today with some of the most brilliant minds I've met in a long time. And so it's always a pleasure. It's exhilarating, it's exciting and inspiring more than anything. Some of the career paths we have, especially since I represent data and AI, I'm going to focus on that. So first, what is consulting? I do get this question a lot, right? Some of the core responsibilities we have as consultants is understanding the business challenges. So, we hear a lot in the media about AI is going to take our jobs, where there's not going to be any more jobs for, college graduates. I disagree with that, right? There's a lot of room for human in the loop, right? Or human in the lead, as some of us like to say. And so understanding the business challenges, making those connections with our business partners and stakeholders, and really getting to understand what are the pains they experience throughout the day and converting those into opportunities for them, right? Opportunities for growth, opportunities for innovation, and recommending the appropriate solutions and the right mix of talent to help them get there. So we design, we deliver, and then we hold our clients' hands and walk them through the rose garden, right? That's where you have the more meaningful conversations, is that proverbial rose garden. That's where you can get to the core of what the problems are, right? Everyone's going to say, my pipeline's not moving data fast enough. That's a symptom. That's not the problem. There's probably a greater problem with a whole bunch of disparate source systems that are band-aided together because they've acquired maybe 5 companies in the last 10 years, and no one's speaking the same language. So our job is to come in and help those systems speak the same language, help them make their data look the same way, no matter who's looking at it, no matter who's working with it, so that we can help them make the decisions they need to make more effectively and efficiently, help them get to those decisions faster, right? So that they can spend more of their time on the things that matter versus trying to figure out how to make their data work. So guiding that change and adoption, that drives how we approach those conversations with our clients. A little bit more about consulting. It's not working on one project for an extended period of time. It can be, but it's being able to be dynamic, interface with different personalities, different personas, different businesses, and that's just not the same, different clients or industries. Within an industry, you have different business units. Everyone has a finance department. Everyone's got a marketing department. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. So really understanding the business, and how does technology fit into that? That's our job at the core of it. So we've got 3 main pillars within data and AI. There's the analytics and BI path, pretty traditional. How do we gain insights out of the data, right? Now we're looking at using AI for business intelligence and helping AI, or looking at AI to do that for us, right? Our job is to shape the data in a way that the AI can understand it and make the right relationships and reduce those hallucinations. Because very, very important decisions are being made by these very large organizations. So accuracy is very, very important. So looking at that, and that's really where you develop those leadership skills, because in this path, you're interfacing with executives, key stakeholders, decision makers of these large organizations. So that those customer-facing skills, those soft skills, interpersonal skills, those are things AI can't do yet. So that's where we come in. Then there's my personal favorite, the data engineering path. It is the foundation, right? Without that data, how do you trust the output? You have to trust the data first. Data quality is at the center of that. So my engineers work on moving the data from one system to another, cleansing it, ensuring that the quality is high, right? And it's reliable, so that any insights we drive out of that, you can trust it, and you can make those decisions that are going to impact thousands, maybe millions of people, right? So it's very, very critical to everything we do, no matter what department or discipline you're in. And we're architects, right? We design these systems. We have to understand how they talk to each other, what the life cycle of that data is going to be, how it's going to be used, all the decisions that are going to be made with that one data point, right? It's very important to understand that. So that's what my data engineers focus on. And then the fun stuff, AI and advanced analytics path. There's so many ways to approach this. There's so many applications, so many tools, it's overwhelming. So I think it's really important to remove focus from the tools, because those are changing day by day. They're changing, they're evolving, and focus on the principles and the ethics. Approach it responsibly, and learn how to leverage the power that all these different tools and models provide, and how to best use them, right? Because we've got to learn how to do this efficiently as well. Otherwise, the return on investment will be low, and adoption will be lower as well, right? We've got to make it make sense. So it requires a systems thinking approach, looking at the problem holistically, really understanding what are we trying to accomplish, how are we going to accomplish it, and what's the most efficient way to do that. So innovation with a responsibility, I think that's the core of that. Some of the case studies, some of the projects that we've done, conversational executive insights, it's pretty standard stuff, semantic data modeling, conversational analytics, and, driving those business impacts and benefits. I have an example. There's a chemical company. I personally worked this project, and we were building a large data platform to ingest data from millions and millions of IoT sensors in water treatment facilities around the country. And there was an example, I was sharing this with a student earlier today. There was an example several years ago where there was a Legionnaire's infection it was in Manhattan several years ago. And the system we built would have detected this had it been live. We were 2 months away from going live. But the platform we built ingested data from all of these sensors. So sensors that monitor the pH of the water, the chemistry of the water, the temperature, and would accordingly alert the maintenance crew so that they could release certain chemicals into the water to treat certain things like Legionnaires or E. coli or what have you, or turn up the cooling tower or turn up the heating tower to change the temperature of the water to make it healthy. So these are some of the examples of what we can do with AI and data and analytics, all combined in a single platform. And then, another one is leading with the data and the AI, right? So a unified data foundation, democratizing data, and developing data products, right? So that we're having an organization and all the business units within that organization using the same trusted source of data, accessing it the same way in a controlled manner so that everyone's got the appropriate security based on their role in the organization and the decisions they have to make, and doing this sustainably, right? So that we are responsible to the environment. So we're not leaving planet Earth in a bigger mess than it is right now for the next generation. So those are a couple of examples of what we've been working on. A very, few examples. Feel free to reach out if you want more. But what does this mean for you in your career as you embark upon the world? Focus on decision impacts, right? Really understand how decisions are being made in the world and in corporate America or wherever it is you're going. I saw a demonstration earlier today in the AI fair. Just in talking with the young lady, I had a million other applications in my mind for that system they built. So really thinking through what's the problem you're trying to solve, then go take 50 steps back. What other problems can I solve with this same platform, right? So those critical thinking skills, building those strong data foundations. So that going back to the technical a little bit, it's really important to understand data, what it means. What are the different things you can do with these 2, 3 data points? It's never singular. It's always multifaceted. Optimizing your learning velocity. Things are changing so much, it's hard to keep up. Even within a day, you'll have something change 10 times. So being dynamic, being agile, and being open to learning at all times from all places. We learn every day from everywhere. And developing the technical skills, but the strategic thinking skills, communication, presentation skills. How do we show up to those conversations with our clients? It's always important to be a partner, no matter who you're interacting with, because we are partners in life throughout everything we're doing and with everything we're learning every day. It's really important to bring that with us in every interaction. So focus on those soft skills, because that's where AI is not stepping on our toes yet. So let's hold on to that for a little bit longer. The humanity in AI, that's where we come in. I will hand the mic back over to my esteemed colleague here. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Nina. It was very enlightening and very, very useful, especially for lots of my classmates and the students here present today. Now, I want to give a huge thank you to all 3 of our speakers. You gave us plenty to think on, but I did have one question I wanted to ask before we sent questions out into the wild. My question is, this is a question every single computer science student has had asked to them, although historically it's been about software, but that has obviously changed with the times. When a logical error inevitably occurs and an AI system leads to a real-world harm, whether it's influencing an election, leading a business to making a biased decision, or something else, in a court of law, who do you believe should be ultimately responsible? Is it the coder, the company, the user, the AI model itself? You can give a one-word answer, or you can talk more about it if you're interested. Oh. Microphone on? Yes. Oh. This thought.
The cynic in me says nobody. And I say that looking back at, we spent the first year of law school studying different industrial developments. And the answer was railroads set fires that burned down towns, and nobody was held accountable. Boilers blew up apartment buildings and killed people, and no one was held accountable. The incentive structures are such that they wanted to protect developing industries. So if you're asking, like, historically, empirically, based on the history of the U.S. jurisprudence, it's going to be, sorry, those were not foreseeable risks. And they were that's the way that the negligence standard works.
I would look at where the requirements are coming from. Because at the end of the day, the due diligence is the responsibility of the person providing those requirements. Whether it's legally binding, I don't know, but to me, a requirement is a contract.
So I would think that the company that released this product with a logical error is I don't know if it's responsible. That's a very difficult question, but at least should answer to that logical error. And it might be a logical error depending on the conceptualizations that it's been used to create the logical model. Right? It's often the case. I mean, logic is correct by, allows systems to be correct by design, but of course, the logic itself should be correctly representing what we want. And especially in topics like bias, it's really difficult to understand what is a bias, how to conceptualize it. So what do we want in our logical model that sort of protects or bounds the system from saying certain things? What do we want to obtain? That's a difficult question, right? And so at least the company should, I don't know if be responsible, but respond to questions as to how the logical model was created and so on. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
That's the debating time question.
Yes. Anyone have any?
Then let's do this one here.
One question from the peanut gallery.
Any questions?
Yes, we got one back here.
So, 40 years ago, in the earlier stages of artificial intelligence, when Lisp was commonplace and when functional paradigms were considered the forefront of artificial intelligence, formal logic and especially formal languages theory was a massive subject of interest. However, today we train models based off of massive amounts of text using transformer learning algorithms and RL. I understand that you were talking about how formal logic still has an impact on modern artificial intelligence, but what about formal language theory? What impact does it have on modern artificial intelligence, if any?
So if with formal language theory, you mean grammar rules and things?
Grammar rules, all of that work.
Oh yeah. But formal logic is goes within. It's within this formal language theory, right? So in order to do formal logic well, you would have to know how to compose a grammar in a correct way, right? So I would think that formal language theory is necessary as well as formal logic.
I think how, because nowadays not the modern LLM are not that this is of
Recognition parsers. They're just vectors in a very large space.
Yeah.
So I wonder how does that still have significance today when it comes to training and refining these models?
So do you want to know how the formal logic or formal language theory is applied? Oh, there's many ways to apply it. For example, you could, as I was hinting at earlier, you could filter the model. I say filter, but it's a metaphor. Filter the model's output so that they agree with the specification that you have in your formal logic or formal language system. That's one way. Another way is verifying, right? Verification. Verifying what it says, whether it complies, which is similar to the previous answer I gave. But essentially verify what the system says. And again, checking that it agrees to these rules, right? Standard things in computer science that are nowadays applied. This is just one of the many ways in which you could combine machine learning systems or even large language models, right, with logic.
Understood.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes, I need.
Well, all right. Once again, thank you to my speakers so much. It was a very topical, very important presentation, so thank you all. And then, of course, thank you to everyone who was present and who joined us today in the panel. Now, before we give up the stage and announce the hackathon winners, we actually wanted to announce the winner of the DHC's inaugural Ethical AI Challenge. The winner of this challenge is going to win a $250 cash prize and a bag, which I need to go grab. The winner's video talked about ethical AI usage while writing. The judges and I all thought that the acronym made for the video, CLEAR, which meant context, limits, ethics, ask measurably, and review, was an amazing and very memorable addition. So please join me in congratulating Karina Shah. And with that, I believe we are done. Thank you.